Hey guys, so yeah, I'm going to be talking about inventory strategies to profitably stay stocked in 2022. I'm going to talk about a couple of aspects of not just inventory, but supply chain in general, and again, profitability, why flexibility and attention to detail will save you from business ending mistakes. I believe 2022 is going to be the year that we need to really get clear on where we're going and how we're organizing our inventory. So we're going to talk about some major sweeping changes that you should be making in your business today. I believe that the businesses that succeed in 2022 are going to do so only because of flexibility and attention to detail. We're going to be talking about restock limits, truly understanding how the Amazon algorithm works and how you can take advantage of it. We'll talk about logistics. We're going to be talking about the state of trucking and freight, and why you need to treat your 3PL managers and your freight forwarders as your best allies. They should no longer be treated as simply order takers. They have a wealth of knowledge, and what they know could help you immensely in getting your inventory checked in quickly. And then profitability. I'm going to be asking some questions of you and of your business that should hopefully expose some areas where you can recover some major profit within your business. Your supply chain has a bunch of profit in it, and you make or lose money before your inventory even checks in. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, a little bit about me. I've been selling on Amazon since 2014. I've been immersed in Amazon inventory for over 3 years now, spoken to hundreds of 6, 7, and 8-figure sellers specifically on inventory and inventory management, written over 50 articles on inventory and supply chain management. I've been on dozens of podcasts. My software has over 1,000 users and is currently used and recommended by top masterminds, influencers, agencies, and aggregators. So first, I want to talk about numbers. Numbers don't lie, or do they? It's very, very important to make sure that the numbers that you're using within your inventory calculations are correct. So we're going to talk about the basis of that calculation. It's something that we call daily adjusted velocity. It uses averages, not monthly totals. So one of the things that can happen is that you look at the total monthly sales, and especially when you're looking historically, say back at last year, when you're doing your calculation for Christmas, you look at your last year's total sales and you blindly take that number. The problem with that is that you've got sales spikes, you've got stockouts, you've got deep discounts, you've got all of these other anomalies that will potentially not be occurring again. So you don't want that going into your calculation. So you want to find your daily, basically your daily run rate or your daily sales velocity. And we call it adjusted velocity because it's adjusted to factor out stockouts and non-recurring sales spikes. Once you have this foundation, which I refer to as true velocity, daily adjusted velocity is true velocity. From there, you can do things like adding your growth trends and your marketing plans and all of that. But you have to have this number correct to begin with. So I want to get into a little bit of a story on why this number matters so much and how you could potentially go wrong with this. So we have a use case of an Amazon seller, a 7-figure seller that had been using software and also had built a spreadsheet. And those two tools were not serving him properly. He kept stocking out and he couldn't figure out why he was stocking out. So we were able to find out what the correct calculation was for his product, and he was able to stop stocking out and increase his sales by thousands of dollars by keeping his best products in stock. And this is exactly how it works. So we have software, we have spreadsheet, and then we have the proper calculation. So the software was telling him he had 8 units a day as his sales velocity. The spreadsheet that he created told him he had 10 units a day. But when we actually did a correct calculation of what his daily adjusted velocity was, it turned out that he had 15 units a day as his velocity, which is a huge difference. So that turned into him going from stocking out consistently by following those directions and placing his weekly orders based on bad data into avoiding stockouts and being able to stay in stock. So why does some of this stuff happen? there are two factors that you need to look at when you're calculating your stockouts. The first one is, did you have stock? This is something that can historically be pulled from Amazon's API. If you don't currently have a software or a system that pulls your API data, this is something that you should track inside of what I call a stockout log. So anytime you have a stockout, note the dates that you had that stockout and note it down so that you can properly adjust your calculation. The other thing that needs to be considered is, was there an unusual interruption to your normal sales velocity? This can include lower sales days when you have a stockout, lower sales days coming back in stock from a stockout, periods of time where you have a stockout, but Amazon finds that one unit, that one day of sales where you sold one unit during a stockout, and also listing suspensions. Listing suspensions should be treated similar to a stockout in that they're not a normal sales pattern. So the major calculating error in a lot of these different calculations, whether they be the softwares or they be your spreadsheets, the major calculation is that you're only looking at number one. You're only looking at, did you have stock, period. That causes problems in this way. You have days that should be counted as stockout days, but they are not being counted. So if you're selling 100 units a day and right before a stockout you sell 23 units, that day should not be counted as a stockout. So in some systems they factor that as that day should be counted as a stockout. In some situations they count that as an in-stock day. We would factor that as a stockout day. Same with that one unit that Amazon finds, same with the day that you're coming back into stock. It makes a huge difference. If you're using a 30-day average velocity, you can see that the difference is significant. We have 26 in-stock days versus 23 in-stock days, and the calculation is a 10-unit difference. So 10 units a day, you're going to be off in your calculation. That causes stockouts. And so that is how your numbers can essentially lie to you. If you're not looking at the numbers properly, your numbers can lie to you and tell you the wrong data, and then that carries through for your entire forecasting. So if you're ordering 3 months worth of inventory and you're 10 units a day lower than what you should be, that's hundreds of units, even up to thousands of units that you could be under ordering. All right. Let's move on to the number one inventory mistake sellers make. So beyond that, once you've got your calculation right, what is the number one mistake sellers make? I've talked to hundreds of sellers, hundreds of 6, 7, and 8-figure sellers, and surprisingly, it was even 8-figure sellers that were making this mistake as well. And that mistake is marketing inside of a vacuum. We are all marketers, and we are all tend to be marketers first. So whenever we hear of a cool marketing tactic, we want to jump on it right away. Problem is that we then can cause ourselves to stock out. Gone are the days of essentially marketing inside of a vacuum. We need to coordinate marketing and inventory. They must work together. So it becomes even more important for your teams to work together due to restock limits. Restock limits means that we not only have to make sure that we have enough stock, but we also need to make sure that our stock is moving so that our slow sellers don't cause us to get into a situation where we're running out of stock for our best sellers because our restock limits are clogged up with slow moving inventory. Marketers need to market across their entire catalog, and so the coordination needs to be done in several different points. The first coordination point would be your marketing gives your inventory their marketing plans to vet out before they execute. So instead of just shooting from the hip and deciding you're going to apply a specific, say, listing optimization technique that boosts your conversion 5%, that's great for marketing, but if you don't have the inventory to back it up, that could run you right into a stockout. Similar with PPC ads, etc. It's very, very important that inventory knows what's going on so they can warn you if starting a campaign with a particular SKU is going to lead to a stock out, because it gets very expensive, not only in re-ranking and air shipments and all of that side, but also if you're doing, for example, 20% off coupons and you're doing a 20% off coupon campaign and you run out of into a stock out, that 20% off coupon could have been a full price sale. So this is one of the things that we put together. I call it the inventory minded marketing planner. And this is a planner that helps you to get all of the data from the marketing team to the inventory team. So the marketing team can isolate what kind of a velocity calculation is being used, right? How are we going to be assessing? Are we looking at last year's sales? Are we looking at a past 30 days worth of sales? What are we looking at? Then you can add a trend. This becomes very helpful when you're looking at your month-over-month growth or year-over-year growth, and you're wanting to do a calculation adding trend on top of that. You can also add a sales growth percentage. This is helpful for PPC. If you know you're running a PPC campaign and you have a feeling that it's going to boost your sales by 10%, you would add that into here, and that tells inventory that they should plan to increase their order by 10%. Then you have lightning deals, telling which range and how many units you plan to move. This is also effective for any sort of sales campaign, an email campaign, influencer campaign, and the like. And then finally, seasonal sales spikes. These could be an increase or a decrease. Let's say you have a summer product that it increases in sales by 50%. You can put that range of sales increase into the planning as well. All right, so now that we have marketing talking to inventory is not off the hook. They actually need to give data to the marketing team as well. This becomes important in helping the marketing team to craft their marketing campaigns to make sure that inventory is constantly moving through Amazon. So one of these things would be the stock out risk report. This is a report that would be used to look at the potential products that are going to possibly stock out. What is that date that they might stock out? How many days are they going to be out of stock? That way, if anything needs to be adjusted by marketing, they can make those adjustments and plan for that occurrence. If they can be avoided, that is great. If not, then they know what to do in that sense as well. An easy calculation for this would be total inventory divided by your daily adjusted velocity. And that would give you your total days of remaining stock. So you would be able to calculate at what point would you be running out of stock. Then these next three are going to sound like the same thing, but I'm going to explain the differences and how you use them from a marketing perspective. So the first one is the slow sellers report. I call it the move it or lose it list. These are the ones that are not necessarily performing up to your standards, but they're not completely failing. The use for this would be to set a minimum and a maximum daily adjusted velocity range. So let's say in your business, 20 sales a day is a viable product, and less than 5 is a product that you just want to get rid of. But within that range between 5 and 20 sales, those are your slow sellers that you think maybe I could do something with, maybe I could revive these. That list then goes to your marketing team, and then your marketing team figures out ways that they could ramp up sales so that these products don't end up becoming such slow sellers that they move into our next category of sales. Our next category of sales then would be your liquidation report. So you have your slow sales report, your slow sellers, and then the liquidation report would be the other report that you need to send to your marketing team. These are the ones that you plan on not restocking. You want to sell through them or you want to remove them from FBA. Now, what the team could do is then devise a plan to move the inventory before it becomes a blocker that blocks other inventory from being checked into Amazon. It doesn't necessarily mean, even though it is called a liquidation report, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will send it to a liquidation company. This stock could be valuable to you, and you could potentially use it to boost your restock limits by driving sales at a lower price. If you're driving sales through Amazon and you're essentially liquidating it through the Amazon platform as Amazon sales, that will help your restock limit. So this can be a very valuable report for marketers to use also to help increase your restock limits by increasing sales velocity. And then you would be essentially setting simply a minimum daily velocity. So we'll say, for example, 5 units, less than 5 units a day is the average velocity. That's going to be your liquidation report. It's going to vary from business to business, but that's just an example. And then lastly is your overstock report. So you can have products on your slow sellers and your liquidation. You can have those products that are also on your stockout report, but you also may have best sellers here as well. What you want to do is you want to isolate these as essentially excess inventory that's sitting at FBA. The excess inventory can hurt your restock limits. It can hurt your abilities to send in inventory and also your IPI score. So you want to be maintaining a good plan for moving the overstock. This is something that you want to use to clear space, to avoid fees, but also, as I mentioned, to use to boost your restock limits and increase your sell-through and therefore increase your IPI score as well. So this might be looking at products that you have more than a 90-day supply, or nowadays even a 60-day supply. More than 60-day supply might be considered overstock. All right, all this talk about restock limits, we want to go ahead and actually address the elephant in the room. We go to a lot of events, we hear a lot of marketing, but one of the questions in the back of our head is, how can I market if I don't have inventory? You can't market what you don't have. So we need to understand restock limits and figure out how can we use restock limits to our advantage, and how can we understand restock limits so that even though we might stock out on a product, we're not completely tanking our restock limits. So first of all is to address why restock limits actually exist. We know that Amazon's been having a hard time on the warehousing and storage side of things. And Amazon never really intended to be a storage facility. They always intended to be a distribution center. So for years and years, we've left our inventory there, and we've just taken for granted that they're going to take any inventory that we send in, and they have gone to the point of saying, no, we're not doing that anymore. So their number one metric for inventory is sell-through. Sell-through is the number one metric. It's the most important thing. It's actually what every single point on the IPI score points to. Every single one of the 4 points of the IPI score, if you start to look at it and dissect it, all equate to sell-through. Sell-through is the answer to everything on improving your IPI score and improving your restock limits as well. So let's understand how Amazon actually defines sell-through. This is the definition that Amazon gives on their platform. Your FBA rolling 90-day sell-through rate is the number of your units sold and shipped over the past 90 days divided by the average number of units available at fulfillment centers during that time. So what does that actually look like? What that actually looks like is this. You have units shipped and sold and shipped within 90 days, and that's divided by the average number of units that are available at FBA. And that would equal your sell-through rate. So if you had 9,000 units worth of sales in that 90-day period, but you were only holding 3,000 units at any given time, that would be a monthly turnover rate, and your number would be 3. So when you go into your inventory dashboard and you see that number, whether it's 1.5 or 2.1, you now know how they're getting to that number. This is the formula that they're using. Similarly, if you have 9,000 units in sales in that 90 days and you've been holding 9,000 units on average, that's a quarterly turnover, and your sell-through rate is 1. Amazon doesn't necessarily like that, especially now. So they will penalize then give you a lower IPI score if you have that particular issue. So focus on getting that sell-through number to increase, and you will make Amazon pretty happy. Of course, this isn't all the factors that are involved in their restock limits. We have Prime Day, holidays, lack of warehouse space, which is something that I call, the oh no lever. And that's exactly, what it sounds like. And Amazon says, oh no, we don't have enough space, so we're going to simply pull a lever and lower your restock limits. So know what sell-through is, know how sell-through influences restock limits, but also know that there are these variables that are also factored in that we sometimes can't really plan for, which is why the next section I will be talking about is flexibility and how to weather those storms. All right, but moving on to utilization. Utilization is a factor of sell-through, and it's a factor of restock limits. So understanding how utilization is calculated becomes important as well. You've got FBA available inventory, all incoming shipments. So that's working, in transit, receiving, and then unfulfillable inventory. All of those equal your utilization quantity. Amazon has said that removal orders and reserved inventory are not included in utilization, but we and many others have found this not to be true. So just keep in mind that your removal orders and your reserve inventory, as they're processing through and as they get hung up, could potentially be an issue that brings down your utilization and blocks some of your inventory from being checked in. All right, so the relationship between sell-through and utilization. Utilization is essentially that bottom number. Utilization is your average units available. So you see that your sales velocity and your utilization both factor into your sell-through. So those are the two things that you can work to improve your sell-through. All right. Amazon, that said, has no sympathy for your stockouts. So you need to understand that Amazon's algorithm is not built to factor your stockouts in, meaning they don't care that you stocked out. They're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt and say, well, we know that you stocked out, but we know that you could have sold an extra 2,000 units. So we're going to let you keep that extra restock limits. They are not doing that. So if we know that they're not allowing us to, giving us the benefit of the doubt of stockouts and that they're going to penalize us for stockouts, what do you actually have to do when you stock out to make sure that your restock limits don't plummet? There are actually 3 levers that you can pull. So these are 3 important things that if you do find yourself stocking out, you can do to help maintain a healthy restock limit while your inventory is waiting to be checked in. So the first one is switch to fulfilled by merchant. Fulfilled by merchant counts towards your restock limits. Those sales, when you sell through Amazon, even if Amazon is not fulfilling, Amazon will give those credits to you and count those towards your restock limits. So if you stock out and you're waiting for your inventory to check in, but you have extra inventory that you can fulfill outside of Amazon, do that. Turn your FBM, your fulfilled by merchant listing on and take sales that way. That's going to help you, right? Next one is the running excess inventory flash sales. So we talked about having those different reports, right? The liquidation report, the slow seller report, as well as the overstock report. These are essentially assets. You can use inventory. Inventory can either be a liability in that it's costing you a lot of money, storage fees, but it can also be an asset, right? The asset in that you can use excess inventory to boost velocity. And you might even be able to take that excess inventory and revive your product. That's something to keep in mind. That's the beauty of what we call storage type limits versus ASIN type. Earlier on in 2020 and beginning of 2021, Amazon had ASIN type limits. So you were not able to manipulate during your stockouts. You're not able to use your catalog to help boost your restock limits. If you stocked out of a product, then that product was going to have to get into what we call a stock out cycle because you could not use other inventory to boost your limits. Right now you can. So keep in mind that excess inventory is a potential tool to use to boost your limits. And then lastly, using multi-channel fulfillment to bolster sales. Borrow sales velocity from other channels. So Shopify, if you have it, eBay, other channels that allow you to fulfill through Amazon. Walmart is not one of those channels. You'll get yourself into some trouble. So stay away from Walmart. being fulfilled through Amazon. That's not a good idea. But let's say Shopify sales. Say you go out of stock with your best seller and you've got a bunch of other products in your catalog that make healthy sales through Shopify. Run those sales through Amazon. And what that will do is those sales will count towards your sell-through and help to increase your restock limits. You can also do manual fulfillment orders. So if there's for some reason you're fulfilling orders through manual fulfillment, such as wholesale orders, when you fulfill those through Amazon, those also count towards your restock limits. All right, so those are 3 levers that you can pull to make sure that you don't shoot yourself in the foot when you stock out. All right, now let's get into logistics flexibility. This is one thing I think needs to be on everyone's list to rework within the new year to ensure that you don't have inventory stockout problems based on supply chain chaos and slows and stops, right? So we have a golden rule that we share, and that is never let anyone have all your stuff. In 2015, we let Amazon have all of our stuff, and they lost it before Christmas and found it after Christmas. It was our own fault because we gave them everything. People are doing the same thing now, putting everything on a boat and hoping, knowing that the ports are going crazy, hoping that your inventory checks in. So what are you supposed to do to prevent that from happening? Now, if something stalls for 2 months, 3 months, it becomes very difficult to pivot off of that. But we have the ability to plan things in a way that mitigates some of that loss, right? If you need a month's worth of buffer, a month and a half's worth of buffer, having a system that is flexible makes all the difference in whether you stock out or not. So this is how I would arrange and how we do arrange currently our own business. Ordering more inventory than you actually need. Let's say you have a container, you're ordering a container's worth of inventory. Order a little bit more. Order, say, an extra month's worth of inventory. Keep it at your suppliers. Your supplier will sometimes allow you to keep your inventory for a short period of time without charging you fees. So you wouldn't be paying on storage fees potentially. And they also might work out an arrangement where you're only paying for what you ship out. So let's say you ship out a container and they're holding backup air freight inventory just in case you need it. You'll only use air freight inventory if you need it. So you'll be ordering in advance. You'll be creating a larger order than you actually need, paying your deposit, and then you'll pay the 70% or whatever it is, the final payment, only on the ocean freight shipment. So you'll ship out your container and then you'll have inventory on backup just in case anything goes wrong. You can air freight it over. You're only going to take that cost into effect if you need it. So if your ocean freight checks in on time, everything gets there, that's great. Then you don't need to air freight. You'll send the inventory on the next ship and you'll keep this cycle going, right? Then you always want to have a 3PL backup and FBA. And then moving into our local supply chain, right? We want to be treating our 3PL in a similar way to our supplier and creating a system similar to what we have with our ocean and air freight. You would treat your LTL shipments the way that you treat your ocean shipments. And your SPD, your small parcel delivery, would act as your backup, so it's similar to the air freight. You only send that if you need to. So you're keeping inventory at your 3PL and sending your LTL shipment. And then if your LTL is having a hard time checking in, take your 3PL inventory and send it small parcel delivery. And then, of course, have the backup for FBM, fulfilled by merchant. Always have that backup, because if Amazon is taking forever to check your stuff in, then you want to be able to distribute your inventory, continue making sales on Amazon, and have your third-party fulfillment center fulfilling those orders. This is the way that you can organize things so that you're always able to pivot. You're always able to weather any of the chaos that's going on across the supply chain. And then we get to trucking. So talking more about trucking, about LTL, and about shipping into Amazon. You probably have wondered why it takes so long for inventory to check in. I know that I have. There's actually a reason, and that reason has a lot to do with Amazon Freight and the trucking contracts that Amazon has with some trucking companies versus others. So the first and foremost, small parcel delivery is always a good option. It's an expensive option, but it's the most reliable option that there is. So small parcel delivery is a different thing. So what we're mostly talking about here is the trailers. Amazon owns a ton of truck trailers. Those trailers are owned by them, and they also have discount relationships called Amazon Partner Carrier, which you're probably all familiar with and potentially using. The Amazon Partner Carrier is potentially the thing that is causing you problems, right? These relationships. Amazon has these agreements with these companies that they have to drop their trailer and leave. Usually they'll drop their trailer, they'll pick up an empty one, and they'll leave. But what is happening now is there's not enough staffing to empty those trailers. So you've got trailers stacking up. That is why it's taking so long for your inventory to check in. Your stuff is sitting in a trailer in a parking lot somewhere. The difference between that and what some other trucking companies have is some other trucking companies can pull up to the dock and open their doors and unload their stuff right into the warehouse, and then they leave with their trailer. That is a different agreement. So if you can work with the trucking companies that have that particular agreement, your stuff is going to get checked in faster. They may have a later delivery time than the Amazon Partner Carriers, but they would have an earlier check-in time. We only care about what I call net check-in time. It means it doesn't matter when it was delivered. I want to know it's going to be checked in sooner. It could be delivered later, but checked in sooner, and that's what I really care about. And so talking to your 3PLs, your freight forwarding reps, these guys are your best allies. All of this about the trucking industry and how Amazon trucking works, I learned from my 3PL owner. So talking to these guys could save you immensely. Now, this whole structure and Amazon LTL, partner carrier LTL, that could change in 3 months. It could be that they iron out all the kinks and that their system is the best and the cheapest. Right now, it's the cheapest often, but the check-in times are very, very slow. So keep talking to your 3PLs, keep talking to your freight forwarding reps. They're the ones that are seeing what's happening, and they'll be able to tell you what is the best to use right now, right? Most of our normal habits is going on to Amazon, creating our shipment, emailing it to our freight forwarder or our 3PL, and calling it a day, and they never get a chance to actually tell us what is actually working. So be in communication and gather insights from them. So yes, so stop using Amazon Partner Carrier, the LTL. It's not very, very reliable or trustworthy. Remember to check in on your 3PL to find out if this changes in 3 months. It's very, very possible that it could. The one factor is that Amazon non-partner carriers are not part of the Amazon shipping network, which means that you may not be able to be reimbursed for shipments that go missing. So you want to make sure that your insurance or your carrier covers the cost of any inventory that may get lost before it lands to Amazon. Something to keep in mind. Last point on this specific topic is log your trailer numbers. This is something that you should call your 3PLs and have your 3PLs do. Amazon can't track your packages when they're in a trailer. They can track trailers. So they have a bunch of trailers sitting there, and you ask about your particular shipment, they have no idea. I'm sure there are people who are listening right now who have done that, where they have tried to track down a lost shipment that's been lost for, say, 5 weeks. It's there, but it's not checked in. Where is it? They don't have the X-ray vision to look through those trailers and find your particular shipment. But if you have a trailer number, every single trailer has a number. They can track trailer numbers, and they can say, oh yeah, it's at XYZ. Sometimes, and most often, it's buried in the yard of your fulfillment center. But in other times, it could be shipped to the wrong location. There was an instance where a shipment was supposed to go to Nevada, went to California instead. California opened up that trailer, said, this is not ours, it's supposed to be in Nevada, closed the trailer doors and pushed it aside. It could have been there indefinitely. But what happened was the 3PL manager called up and said, hey, I'm looking for trailer number XYZ. They looked it up and they said, oh, it's in the wrong state. And they actually were able to override and authorize that inventory to be checked into California, even though it was Nevada inventory. So those are some of the ways that you can start to mitigate some of these losses, these times where you're stocking out simply because of inefficiencies in Amazon's shipping network. Okay, and finally, I wanted to address, this is the section that we talk about profitability across the supply chain. Some of the things that people don't really understand fully and completely are things like how to read a freight forwarder invoice, knowing exactly how your 3PL charges you. How are you being charged for all these fees along the way? If you don't understand those, you're not alone. Almost none of the sellers fully understand these things, which is why we're on a mission within the next year to educate people on these topics. But some of these things are things that are costing you major money, and little tweaks can help you to recover the profit that you've been atrophying over the past 18 months when we've just really basically been doing anything we can to stay in stock. There's a lot of money that's being wasted across the supply chain for this reason. So I believe in a concept called little hinges move big doors, and little tweaks to what you're doing along the supply chain can mean big money. And I'm going to show you just an example and then give you some ideas of some other places that you can look to recover that profit. Here's an example of an audit that I did on a single product. There are new minimums. Now, if you haven't noticed this, talk to your freight forwarders. There are minimums that are coming into place where each carton has to be a certain weight. And if it's not that within that certain weight range, it can cost you in fees. If it's overweight, you're going to pay a lot in fees. If it's underweight, you're going to pay a lot in additional fees. So that weight for this particular freight forwarder was 12 kilograms. The cartons that we were shipping were 7.7 kilograms. They were going to charge us as if they were 12. So we were going to be overpaying by over $6,000 a month or $75,000 a year if we continued along that route. So we had to restructure that. We have to get it to the point where the carton is 12 kilograms or more and it's in that sweet spot. The other thing that we did is we looked at the units per carton. And so, of course, to make the carton heavier, we had to increase the units per carton from 24 units per carton to 40 units per carton. What that does is that reduces the amount of units or of cartons in that particular order. So that we were able to reduce fees as well. Every carton that is handled by your 3PL is going to charge you carton pull fees and carton labeling fees. When you look at that, it's $3.60 per carton, for example, right? In this particular example, we were able to reduce the number of cartons. So we were able to reduce the number of fees, the cost of fees, by $600 a month. That equates to $7,000 a year. So to add the weight fee savings as well as the units per carton savings is almost $7,000 per month or $82,000 per year. It's a lot of money. And that's only one way that we're looking at in terms of optimizing. Here are some others, as well as some tools that you can use to do these calculations to improve your profitability. You can look at your product size. Smart Scout actually has a tool. It's the FBA calculator. And inside of that tool, you can look at what your tiers are. If you say, okay, my product is this size, and then you'll be able to see what you would need to do to reduce the actual size and or weight of that product to get into the lower tier. Some people are restructuring their products. Some people are simply restructuring their packaging to be able to get into lower product tiers. Next would be pallet. On pallet is a valuable tool for this. Make sure that you know that you've got 72 inches. However, there's 6 inches worth of pallet. So you really need to be planning on 66 inches worth of measurements. People mess up on that quite often. And what can happen is that you will send your inventory to your 3PL and they'll have to repalletize it, which costs a lot of money in itself. And then finally, container optimization. peertopeer.com/load calc. That is going to send you to a calculator that allows you to build out containers to optimize those containers. So we're going to be, I believe that Regina is going to be talking about exiting in one of the next segments here. So I wanted to break this down in terms of your exit. So if you have carton optimization at 82,000 per year, that would be on a 5x multiple over $400,000 that you would be regaining in your exit valuation. Pallet optimization, $15,000 a year. Let's say that's $75,000 in exit. If you're able to save on freight costs, $50,000, that's $250,000 on exit. Then stockouts, if you save $40,000 in avoiding stockouts, that's another $200,000 in increase in exit. That's $187,000 in annual profit increase. And beyond that, that's almost $1 million upon exit. Can you afford to lose that amount of money? It's extremely crucial, especially if you're looking to sell within the next 12 to 24 months, to start getting these things in place, start recovering that money, and find not just increased revenue within your business, but then when you sell your business, you should be getting all of that benefit, because these are the things that the aggregators are doing to increase the value of your company immediately. You want to have this money go into your pocket, not into theirs. It's an extremely vital thing to be planning for, and it's all across the supply chain as well as inventory management. So lastly, focusing on flexibility and details will help you to dominate in 2022. This is how the winners are going to win in 2022. And this is part of the business that will help you to scale even better. Lastly, just a little bit about So Stocked, about what we do. We are the first customizable, fully customizable Amazon inventory management software built for sellers by sellers. What that means is not just that I am a seller and that I worked to build the tool, but also we worked with hundreds of sellers inside of the space to build a tool that they really truly find valuable. We also factored in restock limits. We are the first and perhaps only software to factor restock limits into your forecast. We have over 1,000 happy customers. We do free data migration into our software from whatever platform or spreadsheet you have. And we do one-on-one onboarding calls to make sure that you understand not just how the software works, but how it can work within your business. We have customizable forecasting per SKU using restock limits, velocity calculation, trends, sales spikes, stockouts, and the inventory timeline to track everything along the way to make sure that you understand what is going on within your business. And then orders and transfer tracking, customizable dashboards to get all of the data you want and nothing that you don't. And then lastly, PO and transfer creation as well. Here are a couple of things that people have said about us. The most accurate forecasting, getting rid of spreadsheets, solving 99% of your forecasting problems, making more money, and getting your time back. I'm Chelsea Cohen. That's it for me. Thank you guys so much. I look forward to connecting with you guys. Here's some data on how you can connect with me if you have questions. And I'm happy to go ahead and take your questions. I'm sure that some of you may have some.